Olá, galera! Estamos aqui com o Dr. Stuart McGill, que carinhosamente está cedendo um pouco do seu tempo para nós, e a ideia aqui principal é compartilhar um pouco de informações sobre a carreira, sobre a pessoa e sobre o livro que estamos lançando agora, o primeiro livro do Stuart McGill em português, chamado de Back Mechanic, originalmente. Dr. Stuart, thank you so much for your time, and it's a huge pleasure have you here.
Okay, well, hola, Carlos. Obrigado for this time together.
Perfect. So I will start with some numbers here. Over 30 years as a professor in a university, plus 35 years of experience, plus 240 scientific article publisher, many thousands professionals around the world that took your course, lectures, and workshops, 4 books publisher in more than 12 different languages, just back mechanics, 4 DVDs or digital materials, 5 different courses. Dr. Stuart, how do you have so many fire inside yourself to keep working and keep walking?
That's a good question. Hard to answer, but to say I love what I do. I try. When I started all of this, I only ever had one question, and it was, how does the spine work? Simple. And as we started to investigate and probe the backs of really troubled people, really suffering with their back pain, but also the other end of the spectrum, the elite athletes, we would then get asked, how would you come to the hospital and see difficult patients with us? And I would say, well, no, I'm a scientist. And anyway, they would slowly ask me, and it just became so fascinating to try and probe a person and understand the mechanism of their pain from our perspective, which was somewhat different than the medical school training. And we realized that because of the way we approached the problem, we saw it a little bit different. And it was just this wonderful collaboration with so many of my friends and the medics and the trainers, etc., that I just love it. I never lost interest. But I'm going to say one more thing, Carlos. This is so important. When you look at the various people who deal with back pained people and say, who are the most important? Who have the biggest opportunity to change people's lives? I will say it's the trainers, because who is responsible for their movement and their exercise? And every health system depends on movement and exercise, every single one of them. And the person most in control of that are the trainers. So they have the largest opportunity to impact their clients' lives. So it's very important.
Very good. So it's good to hear that, because a lot of people truly believe that just take some exercises and they do not perform a good assessment on the patients, on the client. And I know, because I have been working with you and I have been applying these, and we know how important it is to apply a good and serious assessment. And do you believe that some people do not understand this piece yet?
Well, of course. Yes. Can you imagine a client coming to you and say, would you train me and give me exercises because I have non-specific leg pain? You would say, what do you mean you have non-specific leg pain? What we need is an assessment to understand if you have torn knee ligaments, or you've cut your leg, or you've got a disease. What's going on with non-specific back pain? Of course, it must be assessed, figure out the mechanism, and take away the cause and build the foundation for pain-free movement. And this is what makes the fabulous trainers so successful.
Very good. And a lot of people don't know yet real good about your background, right? People just believe that you are a scientist guy or a professor. They don't know how good you are as a strength coach and how good you are on the cues. And I saw this on some course that I had the opportunity to be around. And people just believe that you are someone that understand about spine and don't understand about exercise, biomechanics, and everything. Can you just share a little bit about this for our audience in Brazil?
Well, I don't really know how to answer that other than we've worked with athletes of virtually every sport you can think of, every professional sport, every amateur sport, every Olympic sport. And you know, we've been at this for 30 years. It's also our background that allows us to understand what are the variables needed for athleticism. And you know, the average person might say, well, you need range of motion and mobility, you might need strength, you might need endurance, you might need the proper psychology and whatnot. But we've always measured top athletes. I've measured the second fastest man in the world and the second fastest woman in the world, the man who has the highest Wilks score in powerlifting, the top fighters from the UFC, et cetera, football players and whatnot. And we measure what is it that makes them distinguishable as great athletes. And as it turns out, it's the neurology of how they're able to activate muscle so quickly and relax it so quickly and change direction and create proximal stability in their core to create faster distal movements in their arms and in their legs. But when you test them for strength, they often don't turn out to test the strongest, but they have the quickest neurology and this kind of thing. So how did we come across this? We came across it by probing the top athletes to see what it was that distinguished them. And then we figured out how to enhance it and train it in people needing those qualities. So I suppose that's how, but you know, we love movement and we've always tried to study that.
Yeah, I agree. Back into the book, Doctor. It's a career that the majority of the time, the hard work is doing alone in a deep and deeper silent moment with a whiteboard, right? You're just with your mind there and your thoughts. What really make you write a book as a back mechanic? What make you create this idea? How did you have this idea about back mechanic?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's something that's always on your mind. When you go to bed, you're thinking about it. And when you wake up in the morning, it's on your mind, which might sound a little bit weird to a guy from Rio. However, that's the sickness, I guess. But anyway, I'd written books to summarize our science for clinicians. And then coaches and athletes would say, well, would you write something for us that's consumable and applicable to us? And so I did. And then some savvy lay people would read some of those books and they say, would you write a book for the lay public, for us? And I said, well, no, I never thought I would write for the lay public, but they slowly convinced me that I should. It was Back Mechanic was a very difficult book for me to write, probably the most difficult, because the publishers, they said, you must write a book entitled Fix Your Back in 5 Easy Steps or 3 Easy Steps. And I said, well, that's a lie. It's a myth that doesn't exist. We have to assess the person, so we have to teach them the self-assessment, which is chapter 6. We have to have a little bit of a foundation and knowledge. And then we must show them how to stop the cause, whatever the cause is. In order to be successful, they had to stop the cause and then build the foundation for pain-free movement as the last step. So the book was actually became 17 chapters, but the struggle was to make it simple enough that the average person could understand it, follow the pictures, and execute all of the moves in their own body. But we also had to make it complicated enough to tell the truth. So it was that blend of complexity to be true and the simplicity to be consumable. But that's what made it so challenging to write.
Okay, good.
I hope we found the magical blend. I don't know.
Yeah, the next question is almost on this direction. Do you have some real testimonial to share about someone that is not part of the fitness industry and took the book, read the book, and could fix yourself? Do you have some real testimonial to share with us?
Yes, we have hundreds. So you can go to Amazon.com, and there's close to 200 testimonials from people there. If you go to our website, the front page of Backfitpro.com, and you go to the bottom, you'll see some very elite athletes who've decided to tell their stories. But there are many, many other athletes that would like to tell their story, but they can't because they don't want anyone to know that they have been here for back issues. It would compromise their careers. But literally, we've seen hundreds of top athletes, and many of them say, well, this really helped. And a few of them said, no, this didn't do anything for my back. So, you know, but we do keep score, and we know who we do well with and who we don't.
You keep doing scoring. The score is still positive. This is the most important, right? Because as you said, hundreds people having the benefits after read the book is a really good number that you need to keep these.
Sure. I mean, we've got some statistics, and people need to understand that the patients we see here at Backfitpro headquarters are failed backs. We don't see the average person with back pain. We see the person who's already been to a dozen different clinicians and they failed to get better, or they were even made worse. Of those patients who've been given lifetime compensation for their backs. In other words, they've been written off by the medical community. They've been given full insurance payout. There's no chance for them to work again. We get 40% of them back to work. Well, it's actually 39% back to work, which is an astounding statistic for some people to hear. Some people come in and they've been told, you've tried physical therapy, you've tried working with a trainer, a chiropractor, a psychologist, the orthopedic surgeon, etc. And the last thing that you have now is surgery. We've exhausted all the other options. Well, if a person comes in that category, we get 95% of them to avoid surgery. So there's another statistic that I can stand behind, because we know from follow-up with patients what our score is. So there's some examples.
Good. And I know that you're still working. I know that you're still having some patients there. Today, do you see more athletes or do you see more general population in your headquarters?
It depends. So this is a pre-Olympic year.
I love this answer.
Well, it's the truth. And this year is pre-Olympic year, as you know. And so that means there's more athletes who are a little bit crossing the tipping point now. And there's still some time to salvage their backs and get them tuned up before the Olympics. So yes, now is a particularly busy time for the next round of the Olympics. After the Olympics are over, of course, I won't be seeing them for another couple of years. I'll be getting other athletes from professional sport and that kind of thing. So it's the games and what's going on in the world that influences the ratio of athletes versus the lay public. But I really enjoy seeing the top athletes, but I also enjoy seeing the very challenging athletes and trying to understand the impediments as to why they've failed. And I really want to change their lives. Being in disabling pain is no fun. So I get a huge kick out of taking a very ordinary person who has a very poor life and changing it.
Got you. Very good to hear that. And Doctor, you are a worldwide famous and very respectful, very admired person for many of the industry. And I'm a huge fan. I always get nervous to talk with you, and as I'm here right now, but it's always very good to have this opportunity to learn. My question for you is, did you plan your career for the next 30, 35 years? Have you been imagining that you will achieve so good success and that you could change so many lives around the world?
No, it's a complete accident. Yeah, different groups ask me, would I come in and talk about career development with groups of students and whatnot? And I say, I'm the worst person in the world to do that. I had zero plan. All I tried to do was to understand better than anyone how the back works. And that was the original driver for it all. The fact that I just kept going. You see, I've never asked to give a lecture. I never asked to write a book. I never asked to see a patient. All I did was say yes when people asked me to see a patient. There's nowhere on the internet, not even on our website, where it says you can see Professor as a patient. I've never advertised in any way. So all I've done is responded to other people's requests, which surprises me. When I retired from the university, I took nothing. I just shut the door and walked away. I never expected anyone to ever be interested in me again. And so it's one big accident. And I wish I kept some of my things now, because people ask me every day for advice, and companies want me to consult with them over their back pain personnel policies and things like that. And I put away all my my government books and regulations and all that sort of thing.
Good. It was a big good accident, huh?
It was just one great big accident. And even now I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, Carlos.
Very good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still thinking, well, for this final act, maybe I'll be a plumber.
You'd be a good plumber, huh? Very good plumber. I know that.
You've been to my house. You see what we do here.
Oh yeah. How do you see Dr. Stuart McGill today comparing with the Dr. Stuart McGill on the last, let's say, 15, 20 years ago?
Can we go back 30 years?
30 years ago.
Okay. 30 years ago, I was a lot rougher.
Okay.
I wasn't as calm and probably a lot more aggressive. But now I hope I'm finally finding the wisdom of age to calm down and enjoy other people and try and help them. So that's all I can really say. I look after myself a little bit more. I do daily exercise. I train. I try and eat better. Don't drink as much.
Do you train more today than in the past?
I train in a more both a regimented way and a relaxed way. So my training, if you take 7 days in a week, I do try 2 of those days to do a little strength training. Okay. 2 of those days I do a little bit of mobility work, which I never had to do when I was young.
Okay.
It worked, it was fine. But now with all my injuries and just being older, I have to work on mobility of the joints that are a bit stuffed. And then 2 days a week, I do something else. So if it's my day to do something else, I look outside and say, well, I'm going to go for a swim or a ski or a walk or a cycle or whatever.
It's a good combination. It's a good combination.
And then 1 day a week I rest. And that's my adaptation day. So I have zero pain. when I was in my 40s, I had all kinds of pain and injuries and whatnot. Now I have no pain. I feel absolutely fabulous. If you told me I was going to have no pain now, I'd say you're a liar.
So you're like wine, right? You're like wine, as more years, better taste, right?
Ah, like a good scotch, yes.
Doctor,
Well, what's that drink in
in
what?
Brazil,
Yeah, that you make with lemon, sugar, and the
caipirinha,
that's
caipirinha,
it. Yeah, I'm like a good
caipirinha,
IPA.
caipirinha, good. Talking about advices, what is your best advice for a professional that want to improve their knowledge?
Right. Well,
Because
do
today,
it.
let me do this question with more tools for you. Because today we see a lot of people using internet on the wrong way, right? YouTubers and these people that talk a lot of stuff on the internet. How professionals can improve their knowledge in a better way, let's say like this.
Right. Well, this is such a good question because the internet is dominated by the marketers, the people
Yeah.
who sell the best, not the people who have the best knowledge don't go on Facebook or Instagram or I mean, I don't even know how to get on, to tell you the truth. My daughter puts on a few announcements
Yeah,
regarding
and I
courses.
know this is true. I know.
Yeah. So I don't really know how it all works, but I certainly don't get my information that way. Throughout my whole life, I've sought masters, and I go to the masters, and I tried to work with them to see how they deal with patients, to see how they perform science, to see how they treat people, not only from a medical point of view, but a personal point of view as well. So study success. And you'll see, I know right now you're with Mike Boyle, for example, and you are seeing firsthand what the variables are that create success. And, we've known each other quite a while now, and you're following that path yourself. You're doing the right thing.
Thank you. Thanks for the advice. And doctor, we have now the first book in Portuguese. I'm so happy and so glad to have this opportunity. Do you have some other chance for Brazilians to see your other books in Portuguese too?
Well, if you want to work with me to translate, yeah, we can.
If you have the opportunity, yes, of course, why not? It's one
Yes.
of the biggest challenges of my entire life.
Well, you're on then.
Okay, thank you. Let's do it. And for people that now in Brazil start to understand about your knowledge, about your research, everything, you have more courses in Brazil next year. Can you just share a little bit about this level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4 for Brazilians? Because next year we'll put this back on the calendar and people can hear a little bit more about the course from your mouth, if you don't mind.
Right. Well, level 1 is a 2-day course where we describe how the back works, the various pathways to pain, and fundamental exercise for building the foundation, creating stress-free movement, and that kind of thing. The second course is a 1-day course on assessment, and we teach the techniques of how to converge on a precise understanding of the client's pain mechanism. And it's not only for medics, it's for the trainers as well, because they're all movement based. Think of what causes pain. It's certain movements with certain postures, with certain loads. And if you avoid those, the person doesn't have pain. So this is very much in the training wheelhouse. Anyway, that's the second course, because that is what guides programming for the trainer and the coach. The third course is enhancing performance, where we say, now we've been successful in getting the client out of pain. You've retained the client. You haven't lost them, which is so important. And now it's time to restore athleticism and resilience in their bodies. So that's the third course. Now you call it level 4. We don't. That's called the trainer's weekend. And it's taught by my colleague Joel Proskowitz from London, England, who we both know, but you know him very well. He's an
Yes.
outstanding instructor. And the first day is really bringing the book Back Mechanic to life. And then the second day is to then leave the principles to get rid of pain and start to restore performance from a trainer's perspective. So it's not a level 4, it's actually really the fundamental trainer's course.
Okay, I got it. I know that is not level 4. I'm sorry to call level 4 because Brazilians understand better, but I will try to change for next year, no worries.
Yeah.
And I know the answer because it's not just about take the courses and after the course you'll be an expert. It's not just about read the book and after the books you'll be an expert. Of course, you have to read the books, right? You have to take the course, but you have to have the experience, right? You have to put your hands in someone, you have to try, you have to learn by mistakes. And this is something that I talked with Joe last time in Brazil. People have to understand if they don't use it, the knowledge that they learned on the last weekend, if they don't apply, if they don't try, they never can be an expert, right? They have to apply the knowledge, they have to apply the concepts, they have to try. Can you share a little bit about this, if I'm right or if I'm wrong?
Well, of course, that's the whole key to being a good teacher. You teach the fundamentals and then you workshop it. So whether you learn with your brain, your eyes, your ears, or your hands, the fact of the matter is all of that comes together. And then you have to practice applying the techniques to be sensitive to what's causing the pain and have knowledge of movement hacks around the particular pain triggers, and then know how to coach. It's so important. You know, for example, with adding proximal stiffness to the torso. Some coaches add way too much. They don't understand that you just need sufficient stiffness to really throw or kick or dance or do whatever it is you want. It's sufficient stiffness, sufficient strength, appropriate speed on whatever foundation you've built. And this comes with experience and practice. So that's what teaching and honing the craft to become a master is all about.
Very good. And like the eyes, right? You train your eyes, you'll be better every time because you start to understand better. Two last questions. How do you see Dr. Stuart McGill on the next 10 years?
Well, I hope I live another 10 years would be the first answer. Because
I was laughing because I knew that this answer would come true.
yeah, this is the great unknown. And honestly, I just try and work every day at this point to create a better soul. And you do that by trying to help other people.
Good.
And that's really it. Don't get too wound up over the little things. But again, a guy from Rio, you know all this. You gained this wisdom long before I did.
Yes. And last question, Doctor. If Dr. Stuart start today with the new technologies and possibilities, do you believe that it could be possible to repeat everything that you did, like the pros and cons of this new society? What do you think?
Yeah, boy, that's a huge question, and you're going to be disappointed in my answer. And the answer is I don't think so, because the struggles I went through have now been negated with a lot of today's technology. When I started, computers weren't even invented yet, so we had to type on a typewriter, any manuscript and that kind of thing. So you know, obviously the world has changed. However, we used to meet with people. The art of conversation, the art of debate, the art of scientific and clinical discussion was in a much more skillful and respectful way. Now people yell at one another on a 2-sentence soundbite on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and whatnot, which is a world I don't understand. And I think it's much more challenging now in that regard, just to sit down with someone and have a human, respectful conversation.
Yeah. No, you gave me the answer that I was looking for, exactly like I was imagining, because we know that today people invest more time trying to complain and say bad stuff about each other than respect and understand each other. Whatever. So, Doctor, thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure to have this first podcast with you. And I hope I can make more of these with another important authors around the world. And hope to see you soon in
Yeah, I
Canada.
hope so too. I hope so too. All right. Well, it's been wonderful, our few years together. And I think together you're bringing some good material to all of our friends in Brazil.
Very good. It's a pleasure to have this opportunity to represent your name and your brain in Brazil. Next,
Well,
next
my
phase
pleasure.
is big mustache on my face. Very good. Thank you so much, Doctor. Have a great week.
I'll tell you though, this is repellent for women, so don't get it yet. Wait till you're old.
Okay, I will keep like this. Very good.
That's better. They like that better.
Okay.
Okay, Carlos. So long.
Thank you. Bye.
Boa sorte.